personas que están aquí en el Tecnológico de Monterrey, a los líderes del mañana que están aquí con nosotros. Estamos en el ciclo de entrevistas Redes Virtuosas de Fundación Hypatia, en este lugar precioso, en el Espacio de Reflexión del Tecnológico de Monterrey en Monterrey. Queremos agradecer a la universidad y a todas las personas que han hecho posible, también a los camarógrafos que han donado su tiempo para poder tener esta entrevista para todas nuestras comunidades. Así que vamos a partir. Estamos con Alexander Schieffer. Él es un educador para la transformación, activista, tejedor de comunidades regenerativas, filósofo integral y poeta espiritual. Se graduó de la Universidad de St. Gallen, donde completó un doctorado en liderazgo y donde continúa contribuyendo como profesor en desarrollo integral y transformación personal y comunitaria. Es cofundador de Transfer M Center para el desarrollo integral en Ginebra, Suiza, y de Home for Humanity junto a Rama Mani, que se encuentra aquí con nosotros también, y ya entrevistamos para el ciclo Redes Virtuosas. Home for Humanity es una red de hogares y campus vivientes y modelos de una nueva forma de educación y vida basada en la sabiduría de lo local y la fuerza de la comunidad. Además, Alexander es autor del libro de poesía Firebird y de la novela Star King, de la que conversaremos más adelante. Bienvenido, Alexander, ¿cómo estás?
Muchas gracias, Aleka, por esa introducción famosa. Y aussi, buenos días a todos. Es un gran placer de estar en México, pero especialmente en Tec Monterrey y con los líderes del mañana. Entonces, buenos días a todos y gracias por la invitación.
De nada, encantadísimos. Alexander es gran amigo de la Fundación, tenemos una relación de varios años, hemos compartido varios encuentros de regeneración y estamos ahora aquí en el TEC. Así que nosotros siempre partimos las entrevistas de Hypatia con la infancia de las personas. Así que vamos a partir conversando. ¿Cómo fue tu infancia? ¿Dónde vivías? ¿Dónde naciste, Alexander? ¿Y qué pequeños detalles o luces ya veías en esa época tan importante de la vida sobre lo que con lo que te convertirías hoy día?
Bueno, primeramente tengo que preguntar si puedo responder en inglés, because my Spanish isn't good enough. So about my childhood, and in a way where the story began, it was born in Germany, in a place called Westphalia. Maybe some of you have heard it because the area is famous for the Peace of Westphalia when the 30-year war in Europe ended in the 17th century. But that actually is a couple of hundred years before I was born. And I was born in Westphalia, into a family with 4 children altogether. But I notice whenever I think of my childhood, I don't think so much about family. I very early felt a sense of not belonging really fully into the family, but I did feel a deep sense of belonging to life. So nature was for me my big entry point, and my big memories actually even from my childhood are really me in nature, me collecting animals, me being on trees or being in forests. So this is really me, and me reading. I loved reading the mythologies of the world. Of course, I started with German legends and stories, but I actually ventured out very early and read the great mythologies of different cultures. Eventually, I also came to Mexican mythology. That was a bit later. But these stories were for me incredibly important because they told the stories also often of leaders and their struggles in achieving what they had to achieve. And that inspired me immensely in thinking about, well, how do I grow up and how do I become a leader or participate in these stories? So that was deeply in my childhood. So nature, but then the great stories that came. and art. You know, I was a curious child, and I actually think I probably still am that until today, that curious child, and that really was for me my big entry point. I found literally everything interesting, which my parents didn't like so much because I wandered off in too many different directions, but actually I felt the whole of life is of importance. So I went into the stories, I went into nature, I did my own art, in particular poetry. I started early. And I always felt, because we are sitting here in a school, in a university, when I went to school, I always felt a bit reduced. You know, I felt I couldn't fully live the whole that I am, but I only had to perform in certain subjects, which I was lucky I could do, but I always felt incomplete. So I looked always for the bigger picture in life. And that is driving me, I would say, till today. I will share more about that, but I would think that's at the heart. I want to share one other thing, because, well, I shared already, I'm German by origin. So when I grew up, that was in the 70s of last century, the war was by far over, but the wounds of the war were still in the social fabric of the society, and I could feel that everywhere. And quite frankly, I didn't want to be German. I grew up there, but I felt I don't want to belong to a society that initiated the Holocaust and that kicked off 2 world wars, so to say. I mean, it wasn't just the Germans, but we played a big role in that. And I said, that's not me. I don't want to be that. And I really struggled to connect to my own place of origin. And that was a difficult one, because I loved life on the one hand, but I didn't want to live life in the country where I was born in. And it took me many, many years. In fact, it took me till my late 30s, 40s, till I could embrace my own German heritage. But one thing helped, my poetry, because my language could go beyond the immediate history. I could go into the depths of where I was coming from. And it helped me to stay maybe sane in the middle of a country where I couldn't see at that time the sanity I was looking for. So I think it's an important part of my story, this kind of cultural struggle that I also went through.
Can you tell me how poetry was this life-safe, or this space? What is, now that you are a poet, a spiritual poet and universal poet, how have you felt through your life that poetry could sustain you or warm you, or
In an interesting way, I discovered poetry before I read poetry. You know, I think something in me looked for a different language that transcended everyday life. That actually, I was curious from early life, what is the mystery in life? The deeper parts in life. And that brought me naturally into poetry, because life is poetry. For me, life is really, it's about poetry. It's not, it's very difficult to catch in facts. It's much bigger than facts. I'm saying this purposefully here in a also university context, because there is a bigger story to tell when we talk about life. And poetry, when I was 10, 11, I started to rhyme, to do, poetry of that age, but always trying to find a language of the soul. I think it was that. I couldn't find the language of the soul in life sufficiently expressed, and so I began to play with words and try to touch. And then when I later discovered poetry, and in the beginning German poetry, and then later I ventured out, and maybe some of you know people like Schiller, Friedrich Schiller, or Goethe is a very famous German poet, or Rilke. I can recommend Rilke to everyone, because he's a poet who could say with words what you cannot say with words. He could go beyond. And that really inspired me profoundly, and that kept me writing and kept my connection with the deepest points in myself, that I could feel would give me the energy to live.
And I'm true to myself. So that was why I nourish it, actually till today. And Rama knows it. Every morning when I wake up, I spend half an hour listening to poetry. Because you don't write poetry, you listen to it. And
you write it down. That's how it works for me. And this deep listening is the voice inside, but also the big voice of life into which I seek to tune in.
Okay, and then how did you choose what to study, what direction to take in your life? You know, this is like the big question also, always. What we need to do next, what we need to study. How did you select your career and what did you study, where did you study?
I mean, it sounds like my life in my youth was full of struggles. It was actually on many levels joyful, but I did struggle what to study. And I don't know if that is something familiar to many of you here. What is it that you want to deepen yourself in? And because I had so many interests, from the arts to nature, I wanted to become a medical doctor for a long time, 15, 16. My first dream was to become an adventurer. I wanted to explore the animals and nature of the world when I was 6, 7, 8. And I always wanted that. I wanted to become a zoo director. But I always wanted to travel the world. And I wanted to study arts. And how do I bring all of this together? Ultimately, I studied business and economics. Why? Well, partly it was also embedded in my family tradition, because that's what my grandfather and my father did. But the decision fell because I felt if I study business and economics, I can be in the world. If I become a doctor, I might be limited to a place, and I wanted to go well beyond. Little did I know that the topic of healing never left me. So while I studied business and economics in Switzerland at a university called St. Gallen University, where I later returned to teach, I was actually pretty bored with my studies at university. And again, why was I bored? Not because it wasn't an incredibly good university, it was. And there was an enormous also intellectual interest, but I kind of felt it didn't fully fill me. So I spent my time at university, at least half of it in theater or in cultural activities or in nature, and always then came back. And that brought me also to trying to understand how could education be differently so that it doesn't limit me to one subject, but that it can bring the whole in. And later I discovered that every subject can actually hold the whole from different angles, but usually it is not taught this way. Usually it isn't conveyed this way, so we go limited into it. And that was my struggle, my decision to go into business and economics, and later I would find out that is also a faculty to which I myself could contribute in making it wider and actually more, you may say, healing or regenerative. Because as many of you know, the way how we do economics and business today, for the world in large, isn't very regenerative. We are exploiting too many resources. We are consuming too much. We are too much caught in a consumption paradigm, and we kind of feel the economic discipline or the economic roadmap we are living by is not taking us into the future any longer. So I studied economics. I felt it was limiting, and now I'm working to create an economy and education which is more regenerative, more holistic. That brought me later back to education, as a passion.
Okay, you always mention the word regeneration, regenerative economy, the regeneration in the person, in the community of our earth. what it means for you, because this is a new term that it has been like, developing and growing and flourishing. So what is for you regeneration? What is, this process of it?
On a deep level, I think we are all called to respond to the question, how do we live a regenerative life? And when I think about regeneration, I like the term because it's a more nature-based, a more life-based term. When I simply say sustainable, it may sound, I just want to sustain something that it's to a degree static. But regenerative is cyclical, regenerative is moving, regenerative is alive. And I'm looking for aliveness, because that is the pathway to create healthy ways of doing economics or education or medicine or whatever we are doing, whatever our disciplines are, or engineering for the matter. So regenerative is for me a living term, and it's what is beautiful that it is connecting to my personal life. How do I live regenerative, or you, Anpe? Or how do we create regenerative systems? Because it's very difficult to live a regenerative life if we live in systems which do not allow me to be regenerative, or which make it difficult to do. And that's exactly the collective work, I think, that we are into today. So coming to Tech Monterrey, where we are now here, and thinking about florecimiento humano, that is much closer to regeneration and regenerative than just thinking about how do we become excellent, or efficient, which actually leads us rather off path. I find regeneration puts us also as humanity back into where we belong, as part of creation, as part of nature, rather than using nature for our own benefit.
Okay, and what became after university? How long did you stay in university? What happened in university? Why did you came back to teach? Or did you have other experiences after university before becoming back?
I shared with you this passion for life. So when I came to university and studied economics, the beautiful thing with the university I was, already in the first week I met a student who was almost completing his studies, and he said, I'm just coming back from Hong Kong. I said, what did you do in Hong Kong? Well, I did an internship there, because the university encouraged students to go to different places. You could stay in your home country for your internship, but I said, that's it. I am using my studies to explore the world, and I will do my best to study, yes. But the real study is to go to these different places where I can learn about how people around the world do things. How do I learn from different cultures? And how do I grow as a human being by not being limited to my own culture, but being connected to the cultures of the world? So I was lucky, and I actually put quite some effort in it. So I went for 3 months to New York, for 3 months or 4 months to Paris. I went to Singapore, I went to Germany, I did 1 studies, and I was in, the best comes now, I was in Mexico. I went to Mexico, and Mexico changed my life forever. Because, I told you I was passionate about learning about cultures and the stories. And when I learned about Mexican culture, my eyes opened to a country at that time, go 30 years back when I was here. Country was regarded as a developing country, not so advanced economically. And I said, that's actually bullshit. This is such a rich country. There is such a cultural wealth that I can see here, where I am actually humbled by the magnitude of your history, of the stories you are holding, of the possibilities of civilization creation power that I saw here. Mexico and the Mayan, the Aztecs, the Toltecs, the Olmecs. I went into all these stories and I was fascinated. And actually, I was lucky that I was working in a music company in Mexico called Ariola in Mexico City. Mm-hmm. And the good thing is, the music director of that company was fired a week before I came. So his office was free. And they said, you can go, board level. You have this office of the music director, and it was full of music. At that time, not CDs, but the big ones, the LPs. Thousands. And the good thing is, all the superstars of Mexico, who usually went into that office to sign their contracts, their music contract, walked into my office. So I met Isabel Pantoja, Luis Miguel, Caifanes, and such people showed up. And because I was the only German there, non-Mexican, so I even got into a conversation. And I learned from another angle about the contemporary wells of Mexican culture. And that really opened my eyes, but it also to some degree broke my heart, because at that time I could see Mexican contemporary life was lost to the gringos. It was kind of lost to Western style. And I felt, hey, that's not right somehow. That's not where the power of Mexico lies. And that was a feeling as a young man. Who am I to judge it? But I felt that connection is so important, and there is something so rich from here that I cannot continue my life in a way noticing how Western way dominates the whole planet, and at the same token crushing it. And by the same token, Western systems, because they present a monocultural way of being, also start to fail and collapse, which we watch today. We can watch it on the big scene. Economic systems, financial systems, ecology, on political systems. We are right, left, and center collapsing. So my take is we need to come back to all our stories, not the monoculture stories. And that's why Mexico was for me the start of my journey to florecimiento, to regeneration. Because I felt if we don't get that right, that we all live our stories as individuals, but also as cultures, we will not be able to create a regenerative way of living together on the planet. And that was my big Mexico moment. And I'll never forget that, and will be eternally grateful to Mexico that I could have this experience here. So, muchas gracias a Mexico.
Okay, and then you went, you work in banking and investments and media industry. What was that? How was that experience, and what you learned from there, for the work you do today?
There is a German poet, Goethe, once said, there are two souls living in my chest, and you have to reconcile them. So there was this side that said, well, I also need to learn the hard things. So, I need to learn finance, I need to be in investment banking to understand really how does conventional economy function, and go into the belly of the beast, so to say, and really understand. And there are a lot of skills to learn. So I became actually very good in project management and in analyzing certain situations, and that brought me also a lot of gifts, though I could see the limitations of that world. But I went into it for a couple of years and really became an investment banker for a while. But then which I always tried to follow my heart, because there was always an entrepreneur in me. I wanted to also create things, which I think is so important, because most of us have this impulse in us. We want to not just follow, we want to create and bring our own genius into life. And coming out of an entrepreneurial family, I felt that's also calling me. And when I was in my late 20s, there was a possibility. Because I had been in investment banking, and I had after that been a couple of years in big media business, so in the communications and media industry. Worked with the biggest publishing company on the planet, at that time, publishers like Doubleday and Bantam Books belonged to that, and music and television and everything, and I worked with them, so I learned a lot about this field. But it was big corporation, and in a big corporation I couldn't feel myself and couldn't see, and I could also see how much big corporate life kills the soul in us. So I left that, and life gave me an opportunity, which was to purchase, with a lot of help, a publishing company in Singapore. I was in that field of publishing already, and I saw the opportunity, and I put all the money I had saved, and I borrowed in the family and from others for actually quite high interest that I had to pay back. I borrowed money to purchase this small publishing company in Singapore. Because publishing, of course, was a very culturally rooted business, and I was interested in that, and we were active all over Asia. And the publishing company was called, I called them First Asia Publishing. First Asia. So I had big dreams, First Asia Publishing. And I worked in Asia, and I lived in Singapore. And I don't know if you know Singapore, but maybe you know about it. Singapore is a highly developed, small spot, highly concentrated, is an industrial hub in Asia, one of these success stories of the planet, of a former colony transformed into a first world country making a lot of money. But if you go there, that was my impression, the country has totally devoted itself to that consumerist Western model, and it actually became a huge shopping mall. You can walk through Singapore from one, an air-conditioned place to another and never see a tree if you want, and can shop the whole day. And in fact, actually, when we employed people, they said, what are your hobbies? Well, window shopping. I said, what do you mean window shopping? Well, I go and watch what's in the shops. And he said, what on earth? This country, standing on the shoulders of Chinese, of Malay, of Indian culture, wow, all these big culture houses, has become a window shopping society. I exaggerate. There are beautiful people there, but in a way, you could not feel these cultures anymore in their richness. You could feel how people got lost on the way. You could feel what happens if humanity as a whole would follow that path. And I did this job, the work there, with passion. I loved it. But I could also see, somehow we need to change the economic model. We need to change the way how we are working and living together. And when after a couple of years there was an opportunity to sell the company, we sold the company. Because I knew I need to go to the next level and work in a new way, which is transforming our economic system, transforming our educational system, transforming our enterprise systems on a global level. And I made a decision to sell in order to serving life in a new way. And that brought me to a very different life path, but I needed all of these experiences before to travel that new direction, which that then came.
But Alexander, did something happen that you took that decision? Something in your life that transformed your vision, because you were in this big dream of this big editorial. How come that you changed the path totally?
For me, the one thing is, the one blessing I think I had very early, I was in touch with there is another voice, and to follow that. And I may not have always followed it, but it was always speaking. And I knew there is something bigger to come, but then also something very dramatic happened at this time, which was, I shared with you that family wasn't such an important part for many reasons that I can share. because it wasn't for me really a place of belonging. Now it is, at this stage of my life, but that was also a journey. And now I'm working to, in a way, also restore what we call Earth family. But at that time, the one person I was close to, I was now in my early 30s, which is my younger brother, to whom I was very closely connected and whom I always had a bit under my wings. Roland was his name, and oops, I didn't expect that. But I mean, you can see, I mean, this young man got cancer. He was 32, and he got one of these cancers for which he entered the Guinness Book, because with 32 you don't get, it's a very aggressive cancer that usually shows up in 60s, 70s, but not at this young age. And within 4 months he was gone. And he was, how to say, he was always looking up to me in a way as an older brother, but because he had real difficulties to live his dream, to live his own passion. And he really struggled in life. And I often felt maybe when cancer came, he gave in. He couldn't go through. And he left. But he left me with a message. And the message was, I can't live a single day longer on this planet not living 100%. Maybe it sounds too big when I say what I was meant to come for, or what is my highest potential. So I really feel this was a total shift time in my life. It was also a time of reconciliation with my family of origin, but it became a time of total commitment to say now I need to fully follow that, the heart, which is your big field.
Thank you for sharing that, Alexander. Yes. And so then you totally transform your vision and your way of living from that sorrow and from that.
Yeah.
And what came after that? What did you build after that?
Well, I wrote even more poetry because it brought me even closer to my soul, I would say. But I really began dedicating my life to transforming the systems we are living in. And I started first starting an organization which I called CELL. You know, like a human cell. It stands for Center of Excellence for Leadership and Learning. And I worked a lot with institutions, corporations to create cultures of learning and of leadership which would be modeled on life, not just on the bottom line, the single bottom line, but having a larger vision, more regenerative, more authentic, more true to how do we contribute as businesses to society, not just take, but contribute to society, not just kill life, so to say, because you may know that consumption is a term that is actually, what's the word? It was the greatest disease in the 19th century, when people died of consumption as a disease. I actually don't know the medical term.
But the consumption consumes you.
It consumed
it drains your energy.
It consumed the lungs. People died of lung infections, called consumption as a medical term. Now it's called when we're consuming goods. It consumes you. So that actually was the work I was doing then for quite a while, but I could see that doing advisory work or consulting work or processes were not taking people deep enough for a long enough time to really transform. And I could understand deeper that we need to almost hijack the educational system where we have long-term processes. You know, you study for 3 or 4 years, or you do a PhD for 3 or 4 years. These are the times of long-term processes when you work with people in this period
they can actually go on a
transformative journey and make an impact in their societies. You can't do it in a week or in a weekend. You can be inspired in a week and you can make a move, but it's not long enough usually. So I actually, and you know how life plays, things then come when you invite them in. University called me back and says, can you come and teach? And I actually went also back to my alma mater, to my original university, taught certain classes there. But again, I could see also how universities are systemically stuck and have given in to a large degree to an old paradigm. So I began creating alternative education outside of the conventional university space and worked with transformative universities and created at that time a new institute myself called Transform. Trans with the number 4, Transform. An institute for integral, holistic transformation. And the number 4, simply because 4 is a number of totality, of wholeness. Yeah, you see many south, east, north, west, the 4 directions. Most of the indigenous societies work with the 4 directions as a symbol of wholeness, the whole society. You need to look at the whole of life. And you find these patterns in all cultures. So we try to understand when humanity is at its best, how do we create holistic solutions that work, that are regenerative? So Transform found that we work at our best when we bring all key dimensions of life in. Nature, culture, knowledge, and economics. And in the center of the circle is the spirit. Is what drives you. Call it spirituality, call it, for some it's religion. It's what on a deepest level drives you, on a deepest level holds you together. That point, if you lose contact, you fall apart. When things fall apart. A great poem once written, when they fall apart when the center doesn't hold. So the center, the heart, the core, the French word for heart is cœur. So when the heart, which also, funny enough, has 4 chambers, when they are charged and when the center is clear, then also the outer dimensions can hold and create a holistic dimension. So we worked with alternative, so to say, transformative education that would enable people to connect with their own wholeness and create holistic solutions. And we created master's programs. We worked, by the way, and then the PhD program. But we created them initially not in and for Western societies, but we worked in Africa, in the Middle East, in Asia. Unfortunately, not enough in South America, as it didn't only come later, because these countries were acutely aware that something is going wrong in their own societies, and following the Western model didn't work any longer. They were open for transition, which many of the more mature societies were not. We have it all, we know it all, but they are looking for something, and there was a readiness to connect also back to their own cultural spirit, which made the change in everything. So working in these societies helped me to understand not only about the importance about bringing all cultural narratives in, creating education that honors the different knowledge and wisdom traditions, not just of one society, because most curricula on the planet are inspired, if not dominated, by a Western curriculum. If you study business and economics, you read mostly American and West and European scholars. You don't read your own. And it's always a reflection that not all voices are heard. And if your own knowledge is not represented in your own discipline, you cannot create solutions that can be rooted in your own grounds. So they can't grow. They can't be regenerative. And that is what new ways of education helped me to develop. So our PhD program, Aleka, then became, of course it was a PhD, but it became a process for holistic development, PhD. Process for holistic development. And of course people also wrote a very solid thesis, but the thesis was written for and with their own society. And we said goodbye to education is only for an individual, but you need to take your own community on the journey. And when that happens, when you then get your certificate, your diploma, you don't get it only for Angel or for Edgar, you get it for your community. And then the community owns the knowledge and the solution that you have maybe driven with them, but they are connected to it, and then you can build a society anew. And that's a passion that is driving. I'm actually not really driven by education, but I'm driven by these processes that bring us into deep learning and creating the future, which for me is what education is for, on a deepest level. My full flourishing, your full flourishing, our full flourishing, with all of love. And that is what then became my big discovery tour around the planet.
And it's amazing what you're saying, that you share the diploma with your community and you create all the projects with your community and with the earth. And in all this process, you mentioned the spiritual aspect is less known, less well known, no? We understand all the other aspects of the holistic view, but how was your journey in the spiritual realm? How did you have a teacher, a mentor, an experience, or a practice, special practice to develop that side?
Well, if I go back in life, my first teacher was really nature. And my first moments was really alone in the forest with the trees, or where I felt, oops, there is something bigger here than just me. Spirit is moving, and I could feel something very significant taking place. That's one thing. When I was about the age, I think I was 18, maybe a bit younger than many of you is here, but kind of close. I watched in German television a late night interview. Late night at that time were the shows that no one watched because it was late night. Most people were sleeping, and it was a German philosopher who had lived many years in Japan, and he got in touch with Zen Buddhism. And then he spoke in such a profound way about the experience that I'd had in nature before, but he gave words to it, and he spoke about the life force. In Japan they call it Qi, or the Qi, like Qigong, and you know that term. It's actually basically the force of life. It's not so mysterious, it's actually very tangible. But it says, this is what you ultimately need to be in touch with if you want to live life to the fullest. And then I discovered in my own spiritual research and with different societies that actually at the heart of all religions is this contact point with what is this force of life that is driving creation. Very often it's covered under dogma when you look into religion. And you find that in all religious traditions. But if you go into the depths and into your personal experience, you feel there is something of significance, which transcends my own little human life. And then, Aleka, something very interesting happened. When we worked on understanding the great regenerative models in the world, we looked all around the continents, what are the most regenerative enterprises, communities, schools, universities, people. But I was very interested in also how is it manifest in organizations. What did we find? We found what I actually initially didn't want to put into my books, but then we did it because we found the people who were driving it had a profound connection to that. They all called it differently, but they had a connection, and they were also not shy to talk about it. Not in a proselytizing way, not in a missionary way, but they acknowledged that there is a force that is needed to do something which is larger than who you are, to create something fundamentally new. And I could share many, many cases from Egypt, from Sri Lanka, from India, from Nigeria, from Zimbabwe, from South Africa, from Jordan to Egypt. I think I have already been in Egypt, but I could continue, and they all called it differently. But at the heart, it was the acknowledgement that if we as humans want to not only create in alignment with life, but do something larger than our own ego-driven or person-driven life, that connection is fundamental. And I think when you are talking about the power of the heart in Hypatia Foundation, I feel that we are talking a similar language here, of what great leaders all acknowledged. And we spoke earlier about people like Scylla Elversy or Jean Houston, one of the founders of the Human Potential Movement. We are blessed that she is the co-chair of our Home for Humanity movement. That is actually at the heart of the work that they've been doing, opening that quality of the heart and of spirit in people to live the bigger story, not just the small story of becoming a businessman, becoming an engineer, becoming whatever, but becoming that in service of life, in service of society, in service of florecimiento humano, you may call it. That's what they all talked about. And that is a journey they help people to walk on. And that is what we are also aiming to do, to be an enabling force, education as an enabling force.
To be in contact with that
Power to create a regenerative expression of your life that can serve your society beyond your life, beyond your name. It goes beyond.
Thank you, very beautiful. You also have in your website a phrase that I love, that it's co-creating a world that is home for humanity. I want to know how this became alive and why home, and what do you feel about this project? How was co-created with Rama Mani, your wife? And if you want to share the story of how you met, or how this was created, I imagine everything is a very holistic and beautiful project, but it's important for us because so many change agents are struggling because they are not living in a whole space, in partnership, with the land, with nature. So I would love to, how can you describe this process of meeting Rama and creating this beautiful home for humanity?
Yeah, well, that's a big story to share, and but probably it's the most beautiful story of my life. Is how to say, in that growing, when I talk about my dedication to the passion that I'm holding, I just want you to know this is, of course, is never a linear journey. It always has been a journey also of struggle and of finding their way and of realignment and of failure. A lot of failure and pain, because transformation is a beautiful term, but it's a tough journey. It also invites you to continuously let go and to move forward, to come closer to the most authentic expression of yourself. But it does help, and I may even say it's vital to do that in co-creation, that journey, because there's only so much you can see about yourself, and there's almost only so much you can do yourself. we are bound to co-create. Actually, you could say life operates on co-creation. All of life. That's it. It actually doesn't operate on separated individualism. It's an absurdity. We are operating based on co-creation, on interdependence. So my great moment of co-creation came when Rama and I met under a French tree. Actually, we were literally met in the middle of nature. And we noticed that we were not just attracted to each other as man and woman and on that level, but attracted because we were holding a vision together, that our visions would in a way merge. And it took us about 7 years, because nothing is easy. We knew that from the beginning, but it took us about 7 years to really step fully into co-creation and say we now really work together, because we also had our own life paths, and it took time to fully align. One of my favorites was alignment. And when Rama and I made this decision that we are dedicating ourselves to this transformative journey, everything amplified and got stronger. Not only the easy parts, also the difficult parts. When you work very close with someone, you also feel the heat stronger and conflict is also near, but it gives you the opportunity to grow through that conflict if you stay committed in it. When we decided that, and we saw that our transformative journey in service of humanity is actually not only in full alignment, but actually it starts where we are. Because the very place where we are living, the home we are occupying in the French Jura Mountains, we noticed is actually the very campus I was dreaming of as a young student, when I was dreaming of a different kind of university, is actually right where I live. And I started to bring from the very beginning students into my home, and my university would allow me to do that. I'm very grateful to that. They would say that's okay. I also told them, because we are living near Geneva, we are also going to meet the United Nations and all of this, so I had some good arguments, but we did the intensive in the home. Why? Because the processes that we were committed to of personal transformation, and for the students of making their own transformative impact in their societies, needed the environment of a home where we could become in touch in a more intimate way with what is everyone driven by. What are the fears we are holding that may be in the way of living my life fully? What is my true passion? And you need an authentic environment to do that. And it's very difficult often in the busy life of a university where you are running from one classroom to another, but when you coming home to yourself in a way, a possibility opens, a window of opportunities. And if you do that in togetherness with a group, you suddenly see, oh la la, it's not just me dreaming of a different world. It's not just me who wants to make a contribution. We all want. Deep down, and that's, I almost didn't believe it. I didn't have a single student over 15, 20 years, Rama and I, who said, I'm not interested in making a meaningful contribution or living a meaningful life. They all are, deep down. Maybe on the surface you say, you want to make money, but when you're honest to your heart and when the space is given, people hold deeper visions. Of course we want to be economically secure. Everyone wants that as well. But usually, none of these young people said, that's my only motive in life, to become rich. That's an absurdity. No one said that. Which also was very helpful for me and gave us enormous confidence in the work we were doing and into the next generation. Because we saw there is a new view of life growing in people that can lead us into the future, into mañana. Los líderes del mañana. We really could see that in that generation. So the home that we transformed into a campus, then over the years, and the name came suddenly, Home for Humanity, given. And we found, Rama shared it earlier, that the word humanity also has unity in it. The word humanity has unity in it. We discovered it after we got the name. And we felt these are places where we can touch base with our own unity, but also serve the unity in the world. And then partner organizations that we had worked with around the world, I mentioned the countries earlier, some, said we are also a home for humanity. Because we also are create places of belonging, where people are not just going to work, but they feel a sense of belonging and inclusion. Important word also is at Tech Monterrey. And because we feel that, we can be innovative. When I feel I'm at home, I can also step into my innovation power. And suddenly I get a sense for flourishing. And flourishing always means the whole of life. Not just a small part of you, you flourish as a whole human being. So these homes for humanity around the world suddenly became a movement. They became an ecosystem of the future, an ecosystem para mañana, where these organizations are learning together across boundaries, across borders, across sectors, across ages, across academic qualifications. All they're each committed to are inclusion, innovation, a regenerative model of the future. We call it integral, a whole life. And they're committed to learn from each other. I just don't keep it for myself. We need to learn together to create a carpet of the future, an interwoven fabric that can show future builders to come, how do we build a regenerative future? And yeah.
Yes, and what a part that I find really amazing is that you brought this word home, no? That it's what we really need. And how beautiful it is that when you, and I can relate to that, when in your childhood you didn't have the sense of home, at home. And then how can you build a home for yourself and a home for humanity? So because one of our challenges is how we manage all this big globalization, international organizations, wars, problems, these global big things that become so too big. So what I see in this project is the coming home in an intimate space we can. What do you feel about that? Because I think this fire, I see always in you this firebird, this fire in the center of home, and well, I don't know.
Yeah, but Alika, I think you nailed it. I mean, a good home has a fireplace in the center. You know, like that's you
yes.
sit around the fire. I guess we did this from, how long are we around as humans? 100,000 years? We sit around the fire. That's where we tell our stories, that's where we get close to each other, that's where we look into each other's eyes, and we see also the fire in each other. So, in a way, you may say, we also activated an ancient human way of being or interbeing, being together. And it was always for us the three levels of home. The one is your inner home, you and your inner home, coming home to yourself, being at home in who you are, being at home. And that means with everything. I mean, there are rooms which are maybe nicer and some are not so nice. I mean, but it takes also as a journey to say, okay, I bring a lot with me and that all needs to live. Because if you block parts of your home, you can't flourish. So ultimately the whole needs to flourish. But then the home, physically, the home you create, it can be your student place, it can be your business, it can be your foundation, Hypatia, can be a university, again, is an invitation to create home, a place of inclusion, where you can show up with, I mean, the best thing is, if you come home after, you finally can be who you are. I mean, in the best way. For many people, home is also a prison. You know, many women get, you know, beaten up at home, and I mean, it's also a torture place for many. But at best, the home is a place where you can be and fully are who you are. And that is what we also invite in the way, if we create organizations, universities, initiatives, communities, create them in a way that everyone can be who he fully is, and the more you can be that, that's a powerful experience. The more you can be that, you transcend yourself. It's not anymore about me and my home and my community. You notice that all of this is only alive because the bigger part is also alive. I mean, no island, no man is an island, has been said. No country is an island. If Ubuntu, what the Africans say, I can only flourish if you can flourish. There is no way out on this planet. If we bomb ourselves in one part into disaster, we do it to all ourselves. It's a wound to our collective. So we need, final level, inner home, your home, Earth's home, the planet, mother home, Pachamama, whatever you want to call it. The big one needs to live as healthy as this, and that's our common task. And that is for us when we talk home. That's it. As simple and as difficult, you may say, as this.
And do you speak also about integral economics? And we are in a economical and political and social collapse. You know, there are authors like Jem Wendell speaking very profoundly about the collapse we are living, and young people are very, very aware of this and very worried about our collapse. No, there's a civilization, industrial civilization, that it's going down, and maybe another emerging civilization emerging now. No, but which changes when you talk about integral economy? What are you meaning, and how can we change? Because this economy that is our home is not well designed, or it's not well designed for these times. We have to change it. How could we change it? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, we gave some thought and practice to it, because for me it's also in education or in learning is, yes, what I can create new thinking, but it's relatively irrelevant if it's not connected to practice. So maybe if you talk economy, it's a beautiful connecting word. I don't know whether you had that in mind, to home. Because you know, everyone, maybe you remember that the word economy comes from oikos, the Greek word, which means home. And nomos means the rules of the household. What are the rules of the household, basically? So nowadays, however, economy is only one part of society. Economy is only one part. But we are living life today as if it is a whole. All is about economy. And we are all consumers. It's all about the market. Actually, would it be nice? Marketplaces were good places in the past. No? There was food, there was celebration, marketplace was Judgment Day, friends, marriages, everything was happening on the marketplace. Now the market is somewhere in the internet, and you don't anymore relate to it on a personal level. So the economy has become something which is anonymous, and it's distorted in a way because it's the only field in society we give energy to. So when we talk an integral economy, on the one hand, we need to bring the other dimensions of life back into life, which is nature, for and foremost, not as a resource for economy, but actually as the fundamental foundation for all of life and for economic life as such. Culture. The economy today is culture free. Actually, it's not. You know, we say the economy is universal. There's just one economy. But if you look carefully, the economy is based on an Anglo-Saxon, Eurocentric cultural imprint. Nothing wrong with Europeans, but everything wrong with a single story. It kills. Monoculture kills. Every farmer knows it. We learn that from nature. If there's not variety, death is near, because monoculture is vulnerable and sooner or later will collapse. We are living in a time of monoculture, and we can see
Results.
collapse coming. Okay, but that's also a bit part of the human story, life, and of the story of life. Life happens in cycles. So I would say, if you want to see it positively, the negative part, collapse, anarchy, finito. The positive is we are actually in transition times. You can see it, and that's how I do believe we are. And the transition time means we have come to an end of a particular story. The story of the dominance of the pure economic life, end of the age of progress, started around in the 17th century. This full expression focused only on the Eurocentric model of science and economics. The age of progress, sometimes it's called, to a degree it was, but to a degree it wasn't. So now is the time coming to an end, and in ending times, always, we see very strange things. The very strange things we are seeing. You see now what's politically happening, distortion of political systems where we felt this is not anymore possible. I mean, you don't have to look very far. It's okay to look at our neighboring countries sometimes and to see the disaster that you see, say, in American politics taking place. But we Europeans know what we witness in America usually comes 10 years later to Europe, and you can see it already happening there. So we are in collapsing times, but we are also in times of awakening. Many people, many young people are now saying, no, okay, we see that we are now going to craft a new future. Home for humanity is to activate every home on the planet, bringing Earth citizens, global citizens to life, or to be a supportive force in this, because we all have a role to play in the future. When times of collapse take place, the existing paradigm breaks open, and that means there is an opportunity for entering these open spaces. Of course, it's a difficult time, but it's an invitation. If everything is set, it's very difficult to enter and to make your own. If it's opening it up, there is a chance. And this is our window, I believe. And the invitation to participate in this, and then the invitation to see economy more integrally, and integrally also means bringing all our economic experiences in. We pretend today there wasn't an economy before the West came and defined it. But the Arabs and the Silk Road, and wherever you look, or if you go back into African tradition, there were beautifully flourishing economic models as well. And besides that, we even today find next to Western neoliberal economics, new economic models popping up where people experiment, develop, or even entire countries. Like, for example, certainly Bhutan had its gift when they talked about we need to create an economic of happiness, because happiness is our deepest value. And if you create an economy which is not true to your deepest value, it's going to fail. So this kind of reconnection of economics to what do we truly value in life, and an economy that serves these values, this is what integral economy means, and the possibility we now have. And I think it's also a beautiful invitation to Mexico to reflect what is the economy we create in Mexico that is true to our own deepest values, and which is not an imitation of a model which might not be authentic to who we are as Mexicans. This is an invitation for every culture. And yet, seeing also, and what do we bring to the global space together as a gift.
Okay, so we are getting close to end, and I want to ask you, what is the invitation of Home for Humanity for the students here in the Tecnológico Monterrey, and for all the communities around the world, because you are starting a new journey around the world. Can you tell us what is the invitation to participate, and then we can end with some poetry.
Yeah, so here's the invitation, so to say. I think the calling of our time, one may say, is how do we co-create home on earth? Either the home crumbles or we build a new one. But how do we create it? How do we do that? And the Home for Humanity impulse is a contribution to co-creating home on earth.
So there is homes for humanity around the world.
These homes are living role models of the future. They are regenerative schools, enterprises, communities, initiatives around the world. Together, they're forming now what we are calling an Earth campus. They're coming together as living campuses, living universities around the world. And together we are creating what we are calling the One Home University, Uni-Earth City. Interesting, a discovery we had. We love playing with language. Important in times of deconstruction, reconstruction. What is the language that takes us into the future? So the Uni-Earth City is a university that puts Earth in the center and serves life on Earth. Doing it by traveling to all countries on Earth, starting next year on Mother Earth Day. And then we are traveling to all countries on Earth, coming to Mexico in February 2025. But actually before we are coming, we are already all together traveling, because from the beginning of the journey, to all countries, to all these campuses that build already the future, everyone can participate virtually in programs that we have created. Like, for example, if you participate for a year, traveling once around the world to 35 countries in 5 world regions, you join what we are calling the Mother Earth Diploma. Mother, not a master, but the Mother Earth Diploma, where you learn to build your own initiative to contribute to your own community and ultimately also to the Earth. You can join for 3 years by every week zooming into another country, learning from the best of each and every country, and in the 3 years you do a PhD. But it's an Earth PhD. And the PhD stands for Planetary Healing Diploma. And actually diploma is DIPL-home, because you build your own home, your own initiative, your own enterprise, contributing to a new fabric of life. All the homes together build the Earth Campus, so we're becoming a living learning field for life. Everyone can participate. Every student apartment could be a home for humanity, as much as a very mature organization which is already active for 30, 40 or 80 years, like Tech Monterrey, because we are now in conversation, Tech exploring, becoming a home for humanity, because it's committed to the flourishing of humanity, and that's what Home for Humanities do. But they're also manifested. So it's an invitation for co-manifestation, you may say, for co-traveling around the world, around the Earth, for the Earth. And everyone can join. You don't need even an academic degree for it, because we want to democratize also knowledge. And the curriculum that is created belongs, maybe you know the term of the commons. It's not belongs to copyright stamp, it's mine, but it belongs to the commons. It's given by each country, and it's given as a gift to the Earth Commons. That's the vision we are collectively holding, and quite frankly, we would love to see whoever is called, everyone being part of that Earth journey.
What a beautiful journey and invitation. Thank you so much for holding it for so long, a whole life holding it in your heart, and now it's becoming real.
And Hypatia Foundation, the organization you have created in Chile, which I really can only invite everyone to explore, is one of the campuses of the One Home University.
Alexander, to close, I would love to hear a couple of poems, because he's a great writer, Alexander, a great poet, and every morning he writes and he receives these messages that are really, really profound.
You're going to hear two poems. I will read it in English, and then you hear a most beautiful Spanish translation done by Aleka. It's part of our friendship as well, and it's a very beautiful way to our poetry to travel into Mexican culture and language. So the first is soul contract. Soul contract. Appoint yourself as secretary of your soul. Faithfully speak what you are told, write what she dictates. This is the finest job imaginable, the only one that makes you wealthy beyond measure. Employed for life. Eternity is your reward. Ensure the ink under the contract never dries. Soul loves to see you signing it in every now afresh. Soul loves to see you signing it in every now afresh. Yeah.
Contrato del alma. Nómbrate a ti mismo como secretario de tu alma. Fielmente habla lo que te dice, escribe lo que ella dicta. Este es el más fino trabajo,
Inimaginable, el único que te enriquece más allá de toda medida. Ser su empleado de por vida, eternamente, es tu recompensa. Asegura que la tinta en el contrato jamás seque. El alma adora verte firmándolo en cada hora de nuevo.
And the second, so, and I was myself surprised what Rama and Enrique have chosen for us. The second is called meditation, because this is also a bit of a meditation place where we are here. So, but it's an unusual meditation. Be blooming rose, parading paradise bird, red apple, fully ripened, magnificent blue summer sky, crimson red sunset. Be monkeys playing wildly, first suckle of a newborn baby, bonfire on a mountaintop, Da Vinci's finest painting, romantic island in a silent ocean. Be dolphin bursting into laughter, delicious homemade bread, breathtaking waterfall, infinite night sky, one with all. Be all of that in thousands variations within your inner theater, each morning, evening, just for a little while or longer. And life will never be the same again.
Meditación. Ser rosa floreciente, ave del paraíso desfilando, manzana roja madura, magnífico cielo azul de verano, atardecer rojo carmesí, ser mono salvajemente jugando, recién nacido en su primera leche, hoguera en la cima de la montaña, la más fina pintura de Da Vinci, isla romántica en un silencioso océano. Ser delfín estallando en carcajadas, delicioso pan hecho en casa, cascada que deja sin aliento, cielo nocturno infinito, uno con todo. Ser todo ello en 1000 variaciones del teatro interior, cada mañana, cada noche, por un ratito o más tiempo. Y la vida jamás será la misma otra vez.
Gracias. Thank you.